Hi, third graders. I don't know what's going on exactly at your houses, but at our houses, we've been reading a lot of books and we've been watching a lot of movies, and we've also been actually watching some TV shows here and there. I don't like to admit the last two, but it's very true. And so a lot of times when we've been reading books or watching movies or TV shows, my kids will stop and say, "What do you think is going to happen next?" Or, "I don't know if I want to listen to what's happened next because I'm worried something bad is going to happen." And I've felt that way really a lot of my life too. It's hard for me sometimes to watch TV or movie shows when I'm worried about what's going to happen to the main character, or I'm worried what kind of action is going to happen next. So this lesson is really for all of you students who are always worried about what's going to happen next in the story or what's going to happen in the movie. What we are doing today in our reading focus for today, is this. You can kind of see here. Sorry, I have to do this kind of kitty wampus because I'm projecting something on the screen. I can describe how each part of a story builds on earlier sections. So what the lesson that I'm going to give you is today is we're going to talk a lot about what typically happens in stories, okay? The kind of the arc of stories. We talked about plot, about how the beginning of the story kind of gets more and more exciting, looks a lot like a mountain, right? And then it kind of comes to an end. But what I'm going to tell you is what authors really look at, what they're trying to build the stories and how a typical story looks. So I have this thing to project up here. I don't know if you can see it or not. It says how to develop a story, an example. So it has first is the arrow at the top. It says the story begins. Now, I didn't know what story to work on with you guys, and because these videos have to be shorter, I just picked a story to introduce this lesson that we have read before that I thought you guys would remember. It's The Dunderheads, and I remember everybody really enjoyed it. So the first part, it says chapter 1. It says introduce key characters. So what are their wants and goals? So really at the beginning, we're introducing all of the key characters, and we're talking about the problem. We're talking about what the characters are all like. What do they want? What are their goals? So remember, we started off from the beginning, and here's Miss Breakbone, who we know she's really mean. She is this class of the students who she's not particularly nice to. And then we also know at the beginning that she hates kids, and every time she makes a student cry, she gives herself a gold star. So then she goes to Theodore. She takes the one-eared cat away from him, and then he starts to cry, and so she gives herself a gold star. And then from there, he's looking at his friend for help, his friend Einstein for help. And we know that this is a whole class full of students who really dislike their teachers. So we get the sense that they're all going to be joining in with the story. So then the next part, really, we're looking over here. It says chapters 2 to 4. Develop opening scenario. What's at stake? So really what the author's doing at this kind of beginning part of the book is really setting up the action. So this part is what I call the classic story of getting everybody together. So getting everybody together to make the action move forward. So you can see here Einstein's talking to all the kids, and then he's trying to get them all in by just kind of appealing to their strengths. So kind of things, he's getting Wheels to kind of scope out her house. Remember, then she's getting Pencil. He's getting Pencil to draw plans of the house. He's getting Spider to break into her house, and getting Hollywood because Hollywood knows a lot about movies and how things work, and Spitball as well. And so then they all get together and they start moving towards Miss Breakbone's house. So then we're going here at chapters. It says, this one says, the further chapters says it kind of keeps going and going. It says chapters 5 to 6, but that really means like a certain point in the story. Make characters grow. What do they learn and discover? So we suddenly realize right here as they get into Miss Breakbone's house that they all have these different talents that they're using to break into Miss Breakbone's house and do their big goal, which is to get this cat back. So these are all the different things that's how the author is really making this story grow and showing us that these characters who are maybe belittled by Miss Breakbone and not, Miss Breakbone doesn't think very much of them, but they all have these like really incredible, crazy talents that make them wonderful people. And so that's what the author's doing. The author's showing us that even though these kids may not be a lot to Miss Breakbone, they're really pretty amazing also when they all work together. And they're kind of realizing this too about each other. So the next section is talking about the who, what, when, and where, why. As the story keeps going, we kind of find out a little bit more about the story. So like the story kind of deepens. We're also finding, remember, they're really not able to find the cat at first, so they have to go break up into Miss Breakbone's room upstairs. And so they're able to kind of get more and more through kind of the challenging parts of the house. Then at the very end, they finally I love that scene. This movie's weird. When they look behind her painting in her room, they have Clips, who hasn't really done much in the story. He knocks his head and the wall spins around, and there's the lockbox. So they open it, and then they find the cat that's in there. And at the very end, besides the maid trying to catch them, they get the cat back. Junkyard gives it to his mom, and they had found this sign in there that said the Dunderheads were here. So kind of at the end of the story, they're talking about how you have to kind of build to a satisfying story climax and resolution, okay? So nothing really bad happened to these guys. They all kind of ended up in the right side because they're portrayed as like kind of the good characters as opposed to Miss Breakbone as being a really terrible, awful, horrible person. So as you read, I really want you to think about how the author builds upon every single kind of chapter. And if you're not reading a chapter book, how the author really builds and moves the story forward from the beginning of the story to the end of the story and really deepens those characters and really helps us understand their motivations and why they are doing this, okay? So that's what good readers do, and good readers start to think in third grade about how the whole story moves and that how it's common, what it has in common with lots of other stories. Have a great day, third graders.